Hello and welcome to the Quick Timeout with Sean Carroll. I'm Sean Carroll. I can't remember what that bloke says. The Memphis Grizzlies have traded Desmond Bane to the Orlando Magic in exchange for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, the 16th pick in this year's draft, the worst of Washington or Phoenix's pick next year unless they're both in the top 8. I won't talk about that any further, it's too confusing. Orlando's own 28 and 30 picks, and Orlando's own 29 swap that's top 2 protected. Wow. Firstly, can you make a trade before trade season is open / the season hasn't even finished? I don't really know, but if so, can we start just slowly announcing some trades in between finals games? Because God, it sucks waiting 2 to 3 days for a game. But this is an awesome trade. I was going to say great or huge. It's kind of huge. It's the Orlando Magic, one of the young up and coming teams, trading pretty much everything they have. This is their big swing. This is the Orlando Magic sitting there identifying that they need shooting, reliable ball handling, more shooting, and pretty much turning bad prospects into a good one, and saying, well, this is our guy. I imagine we've got some like Moneyball type guys in the Orlando Magic front office saying, hey, look, there's this guy whose only accolade is all rookie, but he fits everything we need as a basketball player. This is the guy who's going to take us to that next level. Desmond Bane is 27 years old this season. He fits their timeline 100%, and he closes next to the big three of Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Jalen Suggs if he's healthy. This is a pretty awesome team. I don't know. They're definitely not vaulting themselves into championship contention, but if you're the Orlando Magic and you're looking at the scope of the league, if you're looking at the NBA Finals right now saying, hey, the East is going to be without Jason Tatum and in turn the Boston Celtics, it's going to be without Damian Lillard, and look, if Giannis stays in Milwaukee, which I don't think he should, they're not going to be a contender. And if Giannis gets traded, then it's going to be without Giannis. The East is kind of wide open. The East is wide open to a team that's deep, that's got very good basketball players, that's got versatile basketball players, and a really good coach. Now, I don't think Jamal Mosley is as good as Richard Carlisle the first, but he's definitely not a bad coach. I think the Orlando Magic are like, hey, this is our swing. They're not going to sit in their hands and wait around for a Devin Booker to become available, and maybe they can put everything together in one pot, but I think they still get outbid by some of the biggest bidders in the table. So this is good. This is a hefty cost, but I quite like it. Desmond Bane has never been an all-star. I would say that he will never be an all-star in an Orlando Magic jersey, but that's not to say that he won't. I think he's actually got. I think he's going to have a lot more studio space in this Orlando Magic team. The team sort of kind of built perfectly to him. In Memphis, he was miscast as the 3-and-D defensive stopper because they just simply didn't have a defender, especially after Dylan Brooks left, and after they said, we will never re-sign him under any circumstances whatsoever. They probably should have. But Desmond Bane became that guy that has to take the best perimeter player, whether that be a quick small point guard or whether that be kind of like a larger scoring wing. That is not what you want out of Desmond Bane. You want him guarding the worst offensive player on the team, not because he's a bad defender. I would say he's a tenacious but small defender, and that he's going to join an Orlando Magic team where he's the fifth worst defender in that starting / closing lineup, and that's awesome. That's exactly where he needs to be. He's also flashed a little bit as a ball handler, and I've written a talking point here as, are the Orlando Magic going with point guard by committee? Now, the Magic were, I don't think there were any official reports, but there were some reports by some smart basketball people that were like, hey, they should go after like someone like Anthony Simons. Just get someone who's like a go-to scorer, can definitely touch the paint when he starts dribbling the basketball from outside of the paint, which is exactly what they need, because Franz Wagner, it's awesome. He's a point forward, and you've seen him win a World Cup, and he's definitely like a guy who can handle the ball, but he's not the guy that you want handling the ball on your playoff team every single possession down. You want him to be maybe a secondary or a tertiary ball handler, or a guy who's going to create advantages off the catch. Paolo Banchero, not a playmaker, but someone who can do something with the ball and hopefully find the open man as he gets better and he matures more. Jalen Suggs, again, kind of miscast as a point guard because Cole Anthony and Markel Fultz and Michael Carter-Williams just haven't been elite ball handlers. And it's like, okay, well, this is the best of a bad lot. But he himself is a bit of a secondary ball handler. And they didn't go out and get an Anthony Simons, who's definitely a number one. They've gone out and got Desmond Bane, who's been a secondary ball handler himself, or maybe a 1.5 when Ja Morant's been out for various gun-toting reasons. Is this going to be a point guard by committee? They've got these three guys in Suggs, Bane, and Franz who are good secondary ball makers. And is it sort of like the sum of the parts is you don't need that much playmaking. If you've got a good coach, you can maximize their talents. This I quite like the theory of the team. This is really promising. They've also got a couple. They still didn't have to give up any of their sort of upside guys. I know a lot of people are down on Tristan da Silva, but he's young. He's going to be entering his sophomore year. If he's going to be good, we're most likely going to find out next year, which is it's a swing. They've got Anthony Black, who hasn't really proven to do it on the basketball court, but there was a report/not report from John Hollinger last week on his podcast with Nate Duncan where he said the Orlando Magic are very high on what Anthony Black can be. That could just be completely unwarranted, but if their scouting is correct, then okay, they've got another guy there, and then that's just another potentially like secondary ball handler. They need to decide who's the starting center. They've had this logjam of good not great / bad not horrible role players at the center spot as they had with the point guard spot. But they need to decide who's their starting center and closing center out of Goga Bitadze, Wendell Carter Jr., and the big Wagner, who tore his ACL in late December. So, I don't know, do you re-sign him? He is brothers with your highest paid player. Jonathan Isaac, I think, is a fine defensive center / forward coming off the bench, but I think it's clear that he's never going to be a 30-minute a game guy. He's pretty much always going to be on a minutes restriction, and that's fine. He's a defensive option coming off the bench. So there's still moves to be made for this Orlando Magic team, and I think the issue with this trade is, okay, well, they've made their swing, they've given up a lot of pieces just to get this really good fitting but not great basketball player, and then how are they going to find the starting center, or how are they going to get more backups? If Da Silva and Black don't hit, who are their backups? But I think that's a fine question to ask yourself in free agency. This team will still go. I probably should have searched earlier. Jamie, I ask in my bedroom with 0 people around me, can you look up to see if the Orlando Magic are the taxpayer MLE or the full MLE? We'll get back to you on that one, / we won't. But they're still there's a move to be made in free agency. There's someone that they can bring in free agency. They've still got their own first-round pick as the 25th pick this year. That can be traded, or that can just be simply used to bring in another player. It's not, it's a big swing emptying the coffers, but there's still some moves to be made around the edges, and I quite like this for the Orlando Magic. The Memphis Grizzlies, the podcast / articles I have read and listened to about this trade are rating them as huge winners here, but I think we need to wait until we see the whole picture. Like, it's such an interesting thing where you're a good basketball team. You won 48 games in one of the most competitive Western Conferences we've ever seen. That looks like it's only going to get more competitive as Victor Wembanyama, continues to grow. Cooper Flagg joins the conference. Like, this is going to be a really hard Western Conference to play in, and a team has called and said, "Hey, your second / third best player, we want to overpay for him. Would you give him up?" And if you're trying to be a good basketball team, you say, "No thanks, we would much rather keep the player because we want to have good players on good contracts." Well, fine contracts. But they've said yes. They've said yes to this interesting hypothetical, and the West is so tight that losing out on your second or third best player, he's their third best player, for nothing really. Like, they in return they got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who on paper / on NBA 2K is a great 3-and-D role player who's entering his age 32 season and will just be sort of like a budget version / pseudo Desmond Bane, but a better defender. But he's not that. Like, he's slowed down. This past season, he shot 34% from three, which is his worst since his Detroit Pistons days. He's averaging the smallest amount of points per game since his rookie season, and he's definitely on the wrong side of 30. And he was brought into this Orlando Magic team to do what Bane has been brought into, which is just shoot. This team's needed shooting in a really bad way, and he wasn't able to provide it. Cole Anthony, I made the joke in my basketball group chat that he will be in China in a couple of years. He won't, but I think if you've just asked AI to like generate the most bang-on average guard in the basketball, you're probably going to get him. And that, you can read that one of two ways. You can say, wow, he's average. I don't want him on my basketball team. Or you can read that as, oh, he's average. Oh, cool. He's a replacement level player who's going to play 15 minutes off the bench for a team that's trying to win. But then that takes me to my next point. Are they trying to win? The West is pretty cooked, and it pretty much has been cooked since Michael Jordan retired the first time. It's going to be really hard to win basketball games. Are the Memphis Grizzlies looking at this like, now I highly doubt it, but are they looking at it like, hey, we're probably not going to win. We're probably not going to come out of the West anytime soon. Like they just have to scrap through the play-in. Yeah, it was the season where they fired Taylor Jenkins, brought in Isalo. It's like, are you really going to be that good? So is this trade, and this is why I can't judge it, is this trade to completely pivot and say, awesome, we got this massive kind of overpay from what you would have expected them to get for Desmond Bane. Now they're going to turn around and trade one or both of Ja Morant or Jaren Jackson Jr. And I imagine, the suitors would be quite juicy for that. Or is it going to be a pivot and say, okay, cool, we've got the core of Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr. in their mid-20s. We weren't really knocking on the door. Like they sort of arrived early, splashed onto the scene, lost in a playoff berth that no one predicted them to make. Things fell out with their best 3-and-D four that they had in Dillon Brooks, and they struggled to replace him. So are they saying, okay, let's rebuild let's retool around this core? I don't know. I don't know. Memphis has a lot of first-round picks at their disposal, and they can throw a million of them at the next best thing that becomes available. I don't know if they beat someone like the Utah Jazz or the Oklahoma City Thunder. I don't know if the Oklahoma City Thunder want to bring in like the next best superstar. They're probably, they can win a finals without disrupting their core right now. So do you really disrupt that core? I don't know. It's really hard. I know I've said this 3 times now, but yeah, I can't really judge this trade until we know what else is happening. After this trade, the Memphis Grizzlies can duck the tax by trading, I've written down here, their Sam Hauser. I believe his name is John Concha. Their 3 but no D white small forward who the contending team can dump to duck the tax. They can just dump John Concha for one of these million picks that they just got now, or maybe just a team who wants to take a flyer on him, and then they can renegotiate and extend Jaren Jackson Jr. I think maybe one of the most talked about renegotiation and extensions I've heard in recent memory, not because it's particularly interesting, but because it's a new CBA and this is a new avenue that teams have to keep their players. So what's this team with a couple of young, good prospects like Zach Edey and Jalen Wells, both of who had surgery in the past 2 months, next to Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., all these picks. It's too early to tell, and I'm not going to get into hypothetical trades for Jaren Jackson or Ja Morant. That's a deep 2 or a JVG, not a quick timeout. But they've just brought in 2 quite bad players with some picks that don't really have the upside. I mentioned earlier the top 8 protection on that Washington swap. Also, can we just take a moment to just say, like, how fun is basketball? This team has somehow found value in owning the worst of a swap between Phoenix and Washington, but if Washington's pick falls within the top 8, then that pick doesn't get swapped through 2 teams ending up with the Memphis Grizzlies. It's it's so hard to think like what the hell is going on here. But that should be like the 10th and the 14th pick, assuming the Phoenix Suns are too good to truly bottom out, but also not good enough to like make the play in. Yeah, let's a TBD grade on the Memphis Grizzlies, and a B or B plus grade on the Orlando Magic. They've brought in the absolute best guy that they can, and if someone comes available in the next year or two and they're like, damn, I really wish we traded for, I don't know, Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby or Devin Booker instead of Desmond Bane, I think Desmond Bane's value is going to go up so much by being the only guy who can dribble, pass, and shoot in the guard position for the Orlando Magic with no backups. He's going to be playing 30 to 35 minutes a night. He's probably going to be an all-star chatter. I think you can retrade Desmond Bane. You know, let's say years pass, you've got access to another first-round pick. It's not this. This is a huge trade, 4 or 5 first-round picks, but it's not really that huge. There are more avenues and there are more pivots in the future for the Orlando Magic, and I've sort of changed my opinion since I clicked record on this podcast. But I think this is a really good trade for the Magic. A final point before we wrap up. I was on Twitter reading all the funny ha-has that everyone was writing, and there was this one that they said, oh, you know, a new trade. It was the Orlando Magic. They posted what Desmond Bane's jersey is going to look like, and he's wearing number 3. Number 22 is taken by old mate Franz Wagner. So it's like, okay, cool. He's wearing number 3. Sick. And then someone's like, oh, a new nickname just dropped, 3 Rex. And I'm like, oh, am I missing something? Is there something in the name Desmond Bane that refers to a dinosaur? And I didn't Google anything, but I couldn't think of any dinosaurs called like Baneosaurus. 3 Rex. Why the fuck's he called 3 Rex? I read every comment on that post, and I've got no idea why he's called 3 Rex. Also, it's super cringe. Let's not make that a thing. Yeah, that's an anticlimactic way to end a really good podcast, but thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts. If you know me personally, message me. I love talking about basketball. If you know me professionally, comment. Also, if you know me personally, comment as well. I want to hear what everyone's thinking about the first trade to open trade season before Kevin Durant gets traded to the San Antonio Spurs. Anyway, that's enough post-pod rambling. Thank you for listening, and make it a great day.
You want to talk WNBA? Maybe some WNBL? Australian Opals chat? Heck, even dabble in some Euroleague? Find the W Basketball Show on the Deep 2 Podcast Network.
The Jeff Van Gundy Tribute Show is your fortnightly dose of the lighter side of basketball, hosted by me, Marco.
And me, Lucas. We take a more laid-back approach, talking about the NBA, the WNBA, FIBA basketball, culture, whatever tickles our fancy or grinds our gears.
The show is filled with great guests, classic gags, and a healthy dose of tangents in honor of the great man himself.
The Jeff Van Gundy Tribute Show, fortnightly on the Deep 2 Podcast Network.
You know, loves just talking about the league, certain things like that.